As I've said in previous videos, we don't get much by way of character development in relation to Judas Iscariot, nor any of the other characters in the Gospel. It's not surprising, there isn't the time for that. The message has to be got across very clearly for an audience who will not be literate and who will rely on the spoken word and memorization. And so much of the Gospels are arranged to facilitate that. Here we don't have to worry about that because we're in an age of literacy. And Jesus has deigned in these very dark ages. The dark ages weren't at the fall of the Western Roman Empire. There was plenty of brightness because of the monks, because the church was expanding. The dark ages are actually now. The post-Christian ages are the dark ages. And they're going to get darker, and they are getting darker visibly. But in this time, Jesus then has given us a special gift of Maria Valtorta's visions. And I'm going to read something which gives us an insight into Judas's character, which is not in the Gospels. And this is going to be from volume 5 of the 5-volume set. And since it is the last volume, and as Jesus had instructed Maria to put the various visions which had been given often out of chronological order into chronological order, he'd explained where each vision must go so that it's now a seamless garment, reads more crisply and more chronologically than some novels. And that's a fact actually, because I mentioned before about Charles Dickens's Bleak House, which does have some chronological problems. But put that to one side. Because this is the 5th volume, the last volume, anything we hear about Judas Iscariot, is going to indicate that he's firmly on that downward spiral. And if you've listened to any of my other recitations of those visions, you'll know that Judas Iscariot isn't a bad man at the beginning. He's got his weaknesses like we all do. But those weaknesses are quite fatal, such that had he died near the beginning of Jesus' ministry, he may have been saved. But he didn't. And he encountered situations as many of us won't encounter, so we will not end up in a real state where we're enemies of God. He encountered those situations. He didn't rise to what we're all called to rise to, and he became an enemy of God, the foremost enemy of God. No greater than him will come until Antichrist himself. Though there are many Antichrists, like Adolf Hitler, Jesus expressly says in the Quaderni, the notebooks of Maria Valtorta. But also because Joseph Stalin, Lenin, Trotsky, a whole bunch of guys down the centuries, even Napoleon, who did much good, but nonetheless had the Pope kidnapped, and so he's definitely not acceptable. These are many Antichrists, and St. John tells us in his letters there are Antichrists. It's not just the one Antichrist, but the one Antichrist comes after the preparation of mankind through those little Antichrists. Judas, though, is the chief son of Satan at this point, when the full Antichrist has not yet shown himself. Maybe he's here. There's reason to believe he's here, because in the visions of La Salette, it suggested that the Antichrist will arrive in the year 2000. Well, that doesn't mean he's publicly manifesting himself then. It could be that he's born into the world around that time. This particular vision is going to give you an indication of the depths of depravity to which Judas Iscariot has sunk at this point. In addition to that, it's quite a lengthy chapter, and a few things are going on in this chapter, such that, and by the way, it's chapter 565 of this 5th volume, and its title is Parable of the Torn Cloth and the Miracle of the Woman in Childbirth, and Judas of Kerioth is caught stealing. By the way, Judas of Kerioth is a name that's often on the lips of Jesus when talking of Judas and others, is because Kerioth is the place where he comes from. And I think that in the Encyclopedia of Biblical Studies, something like that I've got, but I haven't looked at it for a while, it does refer to Kerioth as being a possible place of his birth. So I won't obviously do a video for the whole chapter as usual. I'll split them up, but I'll split them up into these three. I aim to split them up into these three themes and sets of videos for each of those three themes. So this vision was given to Maria Valtorta on the 15th of February 1947. Jesus is with the women disciples and the 2 apostles on one of the first undulations on the mountain behind Ephraim. Neither the children nor Esther are with Johanna. I think that they have been sent to Jerusalem with Jonathan. So, besides Jesus' mother, there are only Mary Clopas, Mary Salome, Johanna, Eliza, Nike, and Susanna. Lazarus' 2 sisters are not yet present. Just a point about that reference to neither of the children being with Johanna. If you saw my video previously where Jesus encounters 2 orphans on the road, and he notices how one of his disciples treats them harshly, refuses to give them even an apple, and he curses that man's crops just as he had effectively blessed them and made them abundant. Those 2 orphans were taken to Johanna, who was childless. And that's Johanna, the wife of Chuza. I've always pronounced him incorrectly, but it's Chuza. And he is Herod's chief steward, so an extremely powerful man in the kingdom. So they become blessed children, an abundance of riches at their feet, after having had a horrible life of poverty and their parents dying of overwork and poverty. But at least the girl, it seems, grows up to become a martyr. No doubt the boy, I imagine, as well, but it's mentioned specifically the little girl. She grows up and it seems to imply she becomes a martyr in that chapter I read, near the end of it. Continuing then. Eliza and Nike are folding garments, which have certainly been washed in a stream that shines down in the valley, or have been brought here from the stream and then laid out on this sunny tableland. And Nike, after examining one of them, takes it to Mary Clopas, saying, "Your son has unstitched also the hem of this one." Mary of Alphaeus takes the garment and puts it near the others that are spread close to her on the grass. And again, just to explain something, Mary Clopas, Mary Alphaeus, they're the same woman. And you'll find both names in the New Testament. She's the wife, or the widow now, of Alphaeus, who was the blood brother of Saint Joseph, the husband of the Blessed Virgin Mary, and of course the foster father of our Lord Jesus Christ. And it's Alphaeus who has the sons, and I repeated this again, but it's useful to keep saying so, especially for Protestants. Alphaeus and Mary Clopas are the parents of James, Joseph, Jude, and Simon, who are mentioned in at least Matthew and Mark's Gospel as brothers of Jesus. And that has led Protestants, but not John Calvin. John Calvin rejected this idea that Mary had other children. And Protestants also pay attention to him. But they do say, well, we're just Bible believers, never mind John Calvin, when they don't like him and what he says. So it says brothers here, and that's that. Adelphoi in the Greek. And yes, it can mean blood brothers. But actually, the tradition has always been that Mary had no other children than Jesus. And brothers is a common term for those who are close male family members, and it doesn't necessarily designate a blood relationship. Not even that of biological cousins.